Hey everybody, welcome to a newish style video. It's going to be a review, analysis, Easter eggs, and all that jazz for both, and comparison, for both Marvel Spider-Man 2 and Arkham City. Because both games share some major similarities, whether they differ in a lot of different points. They have a lot of different similarities that I wanted to go through in it. So if you would be so kind, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and share, and all that jazz. Really helps me out, helps out the channel. And also, this will be a pretty long video, so sit back, chillax, and if you don't want to sit through it, that's fine with me. Just make sure to hit the like button and all that, and on your way out. Alright, so first on the chopping block, let's go through this video in parts. So let's talk about Arkham City first. So part 1, the story. Arkham City takes place a year or two after Arkham Asylum, but also in the development cycle, Arkham City took a little bit longer, but it was also being worked on right after Arkham Asylum. Rocksteady actually hinted about it and gave us some cool information after Arkham Asylum was announced, or not announced, but after its release, I should say. Also, heavy spoilers, so if you haven't played any of these games, I will be going into detail, so you have been warned, so yeah. Also, you will be seeing footage throughout the video, for the best of my ability to get some. So yeah. Arkham City was a massive overhaul when it came to after Arkham Asylum. Arkham City wanted to basically make it bigger, grander, better, and cooler. So, grander boss fights, more abilities, skills, more combat options, more strategies with stealth, and a lot of the returning and different villains. So, a lot of stuff that you will be seeing throughout the video. Going into Arkham City, I actually really never played a single Arkham game. I actually played this one first. Ironically enough, playing it on the 360 at the time was a treat. Sometimes it could be a little bit confusing, but it was actually pretty amazing. The boss fights and the gameplay and the story were amazing. It was a solid 10 out of 10 for me at the time, but now it's dialed back to a 9 out of 10. But while we're on the topic of the story, where Marvel Spider-Man 2 and Arkham City basically can be compared in some ways is the character, or one of the characters that are a crucial point, getting sick. And where they also merge in the story front is the stories being darker, telling a tale that really changes the hero's point of view and the story, where Arkham City and Marvel Spider-Man 2 both focus on a very darker storyline, one focusing on the symbiote and that relationship. Arkham City changes the dynamic with the sickness of the Joker following the Arkham Asylum, and also telling a tale of maybe of loss, and also just fundamentally changing the relationship between Joker and Batman by killing the Joker, which at the time was really setting its stone that this is its own universe. You never usually kill the Joker for good. He always comes back, but in this case, no. Arkham City fundamentally changed how you look at the character of Batman by fundamentally breaking him down, and also exploring some of his allies, like Robin, like Oracle, like Alfred, just a little bit, and also giving a taste of the different villains, some of them which were hinted in Arkham Asylum, like Penguin and Two-Face, Catwoman, and giving us a villain that's a little different, Hugo Strange. The reason why Hugo Strange as a villain was completely different at the time
is because Hugo Strange was never used in the movies. You would see him a little bit in the animated series, but he was a villain that you really did not see enough of. He fundamentally was just an ordinary man, a doctor. No different than Dr. Jonathan Crane or any other villains. He has no powers, but he's extremely smart. In the lead up to release, him finding out Batman's identity was something that was kind of unthought of and completely different in changing the character. Because he has found out his identity in the comics, but in the video games, it was a little bit different. It changes the dynamic.
Arkham City also has 2 playable characters, 3 or 4 counting the challenge maps, but going from Arkham Asylum to Arkham City was a big development change. Take Arkham Asylum, the dark, very closed-in, free-roamed world of the asylum, and just the ability to almost kind of half glide, half float in the air as Batman. Going through the 3 sections of the asylum was very interesting, with the dark and horror-esque hallways and the gameplay boss fights like the ones with Bane and others. The villains were amazing in Batman Arkham Asylum. And going from there to City was a big change. Something that the developers knew. When you have a massive hit, it's time to expand. Not just on the villains from that said game, but just in everything in general. So going from Batman Arkham Asylum to City was a massive overhaul. They had to up the ante from the closed down, very horror-esque hallways of the asylum to a very much half-open world. They couldn't give us the full Gotham and the Batmobile because they just couldn't at the time through technical limitations, but they gave us something that was pretty close and pretty amazing all at the same time. Gameplay-wise, they took the founding elements that what made Batman Arkham Asylum great and massive overhauled them. So combat feels a lot more crunchy, giving us more moves, and a lot more different abilities, with gadgets and a lot more sprawling out characters and boss fights in a semi-open world map of Arkham City. And the founding elements that made Batman Arkham Asylum great are still there. Combo meters, combat, crushing combat, and you play as Batman, obviously. So the countering system and all that are still there. The stealth has been massively overhauled with more stealth takedowns and gadgets. This game took the failed sequel formula that usually is the promise of failure and basically defied it. It was one of the very few games that made a sequel that was actually successful. Now, there was a lot of that were, but at the time, they were running out of, that type of stuff. In the sheer opening alone, you're captured by Hugo Strange as Bruce Wayne. You're introduced to not only one of the main obstacles of the game, you also get to see multiple different villains that may or may not come back and basically go after you. You get to half interact with different thugs and, in a way, get to see what hell is going to come your way going into this prison, which, in a certain extent, it is still kind of a prison, but it's very hard to explain the logic of it. But after all, it is a superhero game, so there's not much logic. Going into the game as Bruce Wayne, from a very human point of view, the opening sets the tone for what is going to happen. Not knowing the horrors that are going to await you. Hugo Strange is a very logical villain and very smart. Already knowing Batman's identity, he knows that Batman probably will get his suit and all that stuff. But singing him in as Bruce Wayne puts an immediate target on his back. And finding out through dead drops that Hugo manipulated multiple villains, like the Riddler, Catwoman, and others, really sets the stage. And also interacting with Jack Ryder and other villains makes things a lot more interesting. Going in, this game really sets the hellish tone that's come to defy things. Even seeing Azrael watching you from the rooftops, setting up that he's going to come into play later. And fighting off different thugs as Bruce Wayne is completely satisfying. Seeing the gothish and broken down cityscape that's on fire behind those gates really sets that tone. And that is how you open a sequel, is by setting the tone through intrigue, half mystery, and the dark undertones that define it. And then you get introduced to one of your many obstacles of the game, the Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot, which is a very irritating and annoying obstacle, but he's an obstacle nonetheless. Kicking your face in, and the game will cut to black. It pretty much sets the tone that there's going to be a lot of new stuff coming your way in this game, which really sets the bar. The Penguin is a very half not intimidating figure, but still an intimidating one nonetheless of what he'll do later in the game. Fighting him as Bruce Wayne and kicking the living crap out of him in a way can be kind of satisfying. Of course, getting you set up for when you become Batman, you get to be Bruce Wayne, fighting off these criminals and basically defending yourself, which is getting you a stage of what combat is like and how different it's going to be, giving you more options and basically showing, not telling completely, how to do things, which, if you're familiar with Arkham Asylum, we know you're going to know what buttons do what. Now, if you're jumping in like I did, straight into this without playing the previous game, you're going to be a little bit confused, but you're going to pick up on things very quickly. And of course, you'll be introduced to the health bar and everything and knowing what to do. And you basically have to go and contact Alfred, which sets the bar for other characters that are supposed to help you in the game. Of course, you can just leave there and let Penguin run his mouth, but sometimes I like to go back and beat the crap out of some more. Which is an option. You can beat the crap out of him. Ironically enough, it's kind of funny. Getting the stage for the gothic and dark undertones of the game, it sets the bar as Batman's darkest trial, breaking the Bat down in its fullest form, which is an interesting change to what you will see. Having villains like the Penguin, Two-Face, Catwoman, Bane, Harley, Mad Hatter, and a few other ones like Calendar Man and maybe the Identity Thief and Deadshot. The cityscape is a mixture of the broken down, abandoned parts of Gotham, with ruggedy, dark structures, cracked structures, and basically a half-destroyed part of Gotham, where the architecture and everything surrounding it is pretty much gone down the shitter. Crawling your way to the top to basically get the bat suit is something that feels a little bit different than how it did in Arkham Asylum. A little bit more weight and a lot more abilities. With the game overhauling the engine of the base engine that was for Arkham Asylum, giving us a sprawling open world in a sandbox to play with a overarching mystery story,
trying to figure out what exactly is going on, with multiple villains to deal with, and a fundamental change to the character of Batman, similar to Star Wars Empire Strikes Back. The story overall changes the fundamentals of how you look at the character, and is a darker story overall that doesn't end on a happier note. It honestly sets the bar for being a darker story, one that fundamentally changes the character of Batman. And that is something that is marginally sometimes I wouldn't say overlooked, but partially just seen as, this is the game that killed the Joker. But in a certain extent, it's not completely the fact that the Joker died. It's the fact that it fundamentally changes Batman. Not only does he lose his greatest love, spoilers, for people who haven't played it, but I doubt that there are, but still. But also the Joker dies. With the overwhelming theme of the game is, just building up to this overarching mystery with Hugo Strange and Protocol 10, which eventually is basically revealed that Ra's al Ghul is behind everything. Even though you fought him earlier in the game, him being the overwhelming villain makes sense, but you wouldn't pick up on it. And all this mystery and intrigue, as you slowly put things together, builds up this narrative that really makes it all the more apparent that really Batman is the world's greatest detective, but sometimes he's slow to pick up on things. Funny enough, even the Joker points that out. How do you keep the world's secret from the world's greatest detective? You fit it right in front of his long pointy nose and wait. And with the great combat and the excellent storytelling and the multiple great amazing boss fights and just the open world sandbox element, the game is split into multiple districts, but the main three is Penguin Territory, Two-Face Territory, and Joker, but with a few extra villains thrown in the mix. The game is amazing in so many senses of the word, and is the mere template for Marvel's Spider-Man 2, and how a sequel can basically perform. Basically take what made the original great, but make it better. And that's what Arkham City does, sorry. Arkham Asylum was the template, but Arkham City is the overarching sequel that it's meant to be. It sets the bar with multiple things: story, combat, stealth, open world, and the overarching template that is basically expand and take what you had, make it better, and give people more. And basically make it more better than what the previous game was. And that's what it does. Giving us a mystery and a game that fundamentally changes how you look at the character of Batman, giving us multiple villain bios, learning about these characters, it really sets the bar. And with multiple Easter eggs as a comic book fan in a sprawling world, now let's focus and get into Marvel's Spider-Man 2. A mirror of Arkham City in a completely different sense. This game picks up a few years after the first game and a little bit after Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is itself a standalone spin-off game, which was a little bit different than Marvel Spider-Man 1, which did a similar format to Arkham Origins, but not completely on a prequel front. Took what the game did not as well, but made it a little bit better and a lot more smoother, giving us a different character to play around with. But regardless, Marvel Spider-Man 2, its story is a little bit different than Arkham City in a lot of fronts, but has similar themes and fundamentally changes the characters and changes the setup of how we look at them in multiple senses. The game starts off with a pretty cool set piece and an amazing boss fight with, of course, one and truly, the Sandman, which was an amazing first boss battle in a little bit of a different opening than Arkham City. But both start off from a more man behind the mask point of view. While Arkham City, basically you start off as Bruce Wayne being put into Arkham City. Basically with Marvel Spider-Man 2, you start off from Peter Parker and Miles' point of view in the school where Peter is about to start off his job, which does not end well. The game fundamentally changes how you look at these characters by focusing on a darker aspect of the Spider-Man lore with the symbiote, with themes of trauma and loss and disease and trying to grips with loss and just pain. While the first game focused on wrath and revenge and basically, not letting go of pain, and also with themes of like mentorship and other things, this game focuses on a more sadder aspect, with taking cues from the Amazing Spider-Man series with Harry Osborn, which has a character that's been built up through these different games, and they didn't pull this one out of their ass. Like some sequel games, they just pull a character out of nowhere. This character has been built up through both games, and finally gets his chance to shine. Similar to Otto in the first game, Harry goes through a different type of villain arc. Where Otto was a mentor and a father figure to Peter, Harry is a friend and a brother. Where I think this game works is focusing on that aspect, taking cues from the Ultimate Comics, King in Black, and multiple different Venom runs. This story was amazing, taking every aspect of the lore and wrapping it into one, giving time for both characters. Where Arkham City, Catwoman's story didn't really feel needed and was originally just paid DLC for the story, or just a character pack that if you're lucky you could get, but I never could. With multiple aspects of the story taking front, how does it compare to Arkham City? They're both equal, where both games fundamentally change the character and focus on a darker storyline. This game actually takes the time to build up a villain that is a lot darker and have multiple villains intertwine into this very overarching story. Where Arkham City focuses on the mystery and the build-up of this overarching plan, this game kind of builds up the idea of there isn't really a plan. We already know what's slowly going to be building up and what's happening, but it also takes the time to focus on these different characters and how they relate to things. Where Kraven is almost like a different version of Harry, which is kind of interesting. In a certain sense, it's eventually revealed that even Kraven is suffering through a disease that's going to kill him. But instead of him, forcing himself to, lie in a deathbed, he basically wants to die by someone else's hands, an equal, a challenge. And that's something that's a little bit different, because Kraven is a character that is weird and unique in a certain extent, with multiple comic runs and a lot of different things. With multiple villains and a lot of different side tasks, both characters have their time to shine. With a sprawling open world map with Brooklyn and Queens, sometimes the map on those two fronts, they kind of feel not much different than one another, where I think sometimes the map feels too big for its own good, but it can still take the time to really be cool and amazing. The fundamental changes to the combat and all that is very unique in its own way, where Marvel Spider-Man 1, you had a lot of you could just spam whatever with a gadget wheel and basically suit powers. Miles Morales gets rid of the suit powers, but you can still spam gadgets. Well, this game fundamentally changes that setup, giving you gadgets but more quickfire, not to the realm where you can basically spam them, and combat that feels heavy, unique, but flexible, with a little bit of versatility and different options, taking cues a similar approach that Arkham City did, where the traversal feels pretty amazing. Sometimes it does feel lacking because, if I'm being honest, the web wings are a great add-on, but it feels like you're using them way more than you need to, where the focus should be more on web swinging. Sometimes you do have to use the web wings to get across the water. I feel that that is amazing that you could basically have that at your disposal, but the problem is that sometimes the web swinging doesn't feel like it gives you enough that basically puts your skills to the test to get around this overarching jungle of a city. But it does feel pretty amazing to do, with a lot of different tricks for both characters, some recycled aspects, which is a given, a lot of different enemies, a few new mechanics that feel crunchy and amazing, multiple boss fights, and a lot of different aspects to the city. Something that I thought was pretty amazing, it was something that I was hoping for other games to do, was give the different characters, if you're going to have two playable characters, have them have their own not only side tasks that are specifically for them, but also have their own basically collectibles and side missions, which is something that's uniquely better than Arkham City in this game, where Miles' side missions are unique to him, where Peter's are to him. The only difference is something that kind of dulls down the experience is that with the Peter and Miles side missions, where Miles has a mini Mysterio one, Peter doesn't really have that. And it kind of dulls down some things for me as a player, which I kind of would have liked to see another mission that for both characters have two other missions that focus on a building up another villain for them, where Mysterio for Miles, I get that building up Carnage and Wraith for Peter, it's pretty amazing, but I personally would have liked to see two other missions for these characters. I will say the Venom storyline is handled with justice and amazing and feels familiar. It does take some unique twists and turns and pivots in some areas, but it builds up a unique dynamic and makes Harry a pretty cool character and also an amazing Venom. And a personal connection with Peter gives it a finality, where Otto was the father, Harry is the brother, in a way that basically Eddie Brock couldn't be. So in a certain extent, this game is pretty amazing, and it really does the characters justice. And also does a storyline that deals with so many things in a unique way. Loss and pain and just a lot of things that are given a finality and revenge. So like Arkham City before it, it handles the character and changes the dynamic of the story and gives it a darker undertone and not completely ends it on a complete positive note and leaves room for a final game that might be the last in the trilogy.